In this tutorial, we're going to look at the proxy object that was introduced in ES6. So a proxy in JavaScript is a way of intercepting and creating custom behaviour for fundamental operations on objects. So if you think about when you look up a property of an object or assign it a value, you can put a custom function in front of those operations to modify its behaviour. So let's imagine you had an object with some user data in it. You can assign a proxy to this object by creating a new proxy object and passing the user variable in as the first argument. So just doing this on its own won't have any effect on the lookup or assignment of properties to the user object, but you can create this custom behaviour by passing in a function in as the second argument when creating a new proxy. So inside our handler variable, we need to set up something called a trap, which recognises the behaviour that we're performing on the user object and change it accordingly. For example, if we wanted to modify the behaviour of when we access a property on the object, we would want to set up the get trap on the handler object. So you can see now when we try and access the name property of the proxied user object, it will simply return the string nothing here. And the same would be for any property that we try and access on that user object, including the password or a non-existent property. So that's just an example of using the get trap in a proxy, but realistically we might want to only affect some properties and modify the way they're displayed when the property is accessed. So here we've just modified the get trap to check the name of the property that we're trying to access, and if that's equal to password, we'll just return a string that's repeated for as long as the value of the password property is. If not, we'll just actually return the value stored in the object with that property name. So the other thing we can do is set up a set trap, which, as the name suggests, will be called when we try and assign a value to any property within our proxied user object. And this time we've actually got access to the overall object, the property that we're setting, and the value that's been supplied. So with this information we could set up some simple validation. Which will basically check if the property we're trying to set is the password property, and if the value supplied is less than 8. And if those two conditions are true, we'll throw a new range error, but if not, we'll actually assign the value to the property of the object. You'll also notice that the set trap has to return a value of true or false, just to let the proxy know if the set operation, or rather the assignment operation, was successful or not. So now if we try and assign a value to the password, you'll see in the output on the right hand side we're actually getting that range error because the conditions in the if statement inside the set trap has failed, but if we make our password a little longer, you can see the password property on the proxied user object gets set successfully. So that's just a quick introduction to proxies in ES6, and as you can see the set traps are quite useful for validation or value correction, whereas get traps are quite useful for extending the property lookup of an object, and there are some other traps available when you're working with iterable objects.